Welcome to the podcast today. I am here with Ashlynn, and I am so excited to talk to her a bit about her work and what she does. She also has a podcast and provides a great community online for her audience. I've been following her for a while, and I just love what she shares there and the welcoming atmosphere, the welcoming, community that you have, that you are very accepting and understanding and non-judgmental, and it just is a great place to be. So first of all, Ashlynn, I'd love for you to just introduce yourself and tell a bit about you and your work.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. It means a lot because I was called judgmental my whole upbringing. And so for me to expand my thinking a little bit has been a really big deal for me and given me more grace for myself as well. So I help women around the world after they have been through betrayal and sometimes divorce. I've been through both. And I was in a 21-year marriage and we ended up getting unmarried. And so the healing process has been a really beautiful thing to experience and also witness in so many different cultures and beliefs and circumstances that women face. And so that has become my work. And I have two teenage girls that are with me 90% of the time, and I am in a long-term partnership with my boyfriend. And we live in northern Utah, and we have a lot of fun. We get to go outside a lot and skate and hike, and then I work at home.
Awesome. Well, cool. And I know that, you share a lot about your journey with being unmarried and how that all went. And I know that you've provided a safe place for people that have had a similar story. I see that you are kind of expanding that now to kind of anyone that's wanting to transform their life, I guess you could say. Can you tell a bit about that and kind of why you've shifted?
Yeah, thank you. It's partly because I am out of that space. It's hard for me to go that far back, a decade back on a daily basis and give people the empathy and love that they need to get started. I want them to just jump forward a million steps and get past some of the things. So 95% of my clients work with a therapist and then they come to my groups. And then there's all these other people who are listeners of the podcast or follow me over on social media who have nothing of my story, but still want the skills that I teach in my groups or at my retreats. And so I am opening up an online community. It's a gathering for a radiant circle of women. And it's a 10-week ongoing course that I will do that's live, where we get to practice the things that I teach at my retreats, but it's a longer period of time and you don't have to have my story and you don't have to share your story. It's just this opening it up to people who maybe don't go to therapy and who don't maybe need that really strong transformation, but want something more in their life. They feel something's missing.
Right. I think that's great. And I think it's helpful to have that support because I think a lot of people do want to, improve their life and live life authentically to who they are.
Yeah.
But sometimes, it's hard we get distracted by just the day-to-day life, right? And to have a place where you're supported and reminded and encouraged. I'm sure that's going to be huge for a lot of women.
I hope so. The idea is to shed some of the beliefs and layers that the idea that people told us who to be, and we got to figure out who we are supposed to be according to us.
Right. Yeah. So with my podcast here, I like to talk a lot about, I believe generational trauma is a real thing.
Me too.
Yeah. Have you kind of dove into that with your own family?
I have, and it's interesting because I gave you a side of my family that I don't know a lot about because the other side of my family brings me still some pain because there is so much of the same generational trauma, sexual abuse and sexual betrayal, like generation, including divorce. And I remember when I was a young teenager and seeing my grandmother and my mom and my sisters take those same paths. I was determined to not be like them. And yet I had no idea how to do that. And I didn't understand generational trauma. I just thought it was some sort of curse. Like, I'm not going to be like them. And here I am like them. And so I'm really doing my best to try to undo what so many in my family before have been hurt by. And hopefully my girls, get to experience a little bit different. I think it's going to take a while for us to undo, right? My mom undid
Mhm.
some, my sisters undo some. I'm trying. And then my girls, I hope, can continue to undo the pain. I've definitely, like, through breath work or different journeys that I've taken where I'm like connected to myself. I've had those experiences with the women before me who I just feel their pain and
Right.
feel their sorrow. And I have regret that I didn't know those parts of my grandma before she passed. We hide those parts of us
Yep.
because it's shameful or
Mhm.
hurtful. And what I could have gained to hear her side
Mm.
of things before she passed away. I would have loved
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Things were definitely more hidden back then too. I think there was a lot of shame and a lot of people like just stayed in those marriages that were harmful and so in one sense, those are powerful women that you come from that were able to
Absolutely.
take those steps to change, you know. Yeah. All right. Well, you really wanted to learn about your grandfather, so your father's side.
Mhm.
Can you just tell a bit why you were interested in them?
Yeah. Well, my dad passed away. It's been 5 years. I don't even know. That sounds
Mhm.
crazy. 4 years. 4 years.
Mhm.
And he never really told me a lot about his dad. He told me little bits and stories, but his dad passed away when he was only 13. My dad was 13. And so I never got to know who this man was. The only piece that I saw was that he married a very strong woman because my grandmother never remarried. She was a strong widow of three teenagers
Mhm.
and did it on her own. And I love my dad and who he was, and he didn't have that figure in his life to
Mhm.
direct him. And yet he became the father of six and has a great legacy. And so I just wanted to learn a little bit more about the grandfather I never knew.
Mhm. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I have loved getting to know him and learning more about that side of your family. So I'm excited to share this with you. Let's just make sure that's all right. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So a lot of the things that I found on here are on the family tree on FamilySearch, but then I found some other records and things to share with you to kind of tie it all together. So here is your grandfather's death record. We actually see we can learn a lot from this one record. So you can see his place of death was 1.5 miles north of Delta, Utah. He was 45 and he was a mail carrier or rural mail carrier. We see the names of his parents and his spouse and that he served in World War II. We have the cause of death was a myocardial infarction, which is a heart attack, and it was sudden. So he was found dead. Like you said, your father was 13 at the time, and I can imagine that that would be extremely difficult for him and for his family. So we're going to be learning about him, your grandfather, David Verrill Allen. So he was born on March 30th in 1920 in Granite, Utah. This is his mother here. I couldn't find a adult picture of his father, but he was the third child born to, now I'm not even sure if I'm saying his name right, Onezyme.
I
Have you
don't
heard
know
that name
either.
before?
I've seen it, but I
Okay.
just don't know how to say it.
Onezyme? I don't know. That's how he was born to Onezyme Allen and Cora Wall. So this is his mother, Cora. So thought it was neat to have his actual birth record here. I thought it was interesting. On his birth record, his name is listed as Verrill Allen. So on other records, it's David Verrill Allen. So I thought it was on his birth
Okay.
record that
I have
wasn't
to
written.
say, the funny thing is, my dad is Arnold Paul Allen, but he went by Paul Allen.
Oh,
And so
funny.
same thing, but it's my grandmother did not want his name to be Arnold, and my grandfather wanted it to be Arnold. So
Oh, funny.
they kind of fought over that. So interesting that it's a similar dynamic.
That's funny. Yeah. So Verrill's oldest sister, Ona, so Cora and Onezyme had a daughter named Ona Allen, and she was almost 1 year old when she died in 1918. So about 2 years before your grandfather was born, they had So his older sister passed away before he was born. And then here in 1920, here's the census of 1920. Here's his older sister, Arva, which they didn't write it correctly in the census, is here with her parents, WWII and Cora. You can see the name they didn't get quite right there. It's like written down as Orjamirs.
Okay.
But here they are, and they were living in Granite, Utah. Yeah.
Hmm.
So his occupation was a poultry farmer, and they were in Granite, Utah, which is just, do you know where that is? So it's just a little northeast of Draper. That's what I saw there. And this census was taken in January, so just 2 months before your grandfather, Verl, would have been born.
Okay.
So looking at your family here on FamilySearch, I saw that Verl's father, WWII, had been married before marrying Verl's mother, Cora. So he had married Vera Irene Moffat in 1914, and they had one daughter, Neva Irene, and they divorced 2 years later. So here's just a newspaper notice for their divorce being finalized in 1916. So then a month later, WWII and Cora Wall were married in Elko,
Okay.
Nevada.
I did not know this.
Yeah. I wondered if you knew that.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah. So not sure the story there or anything, but a month after their divorce was granted, he married Cora Wall on July 8th, 1916. Not sure why they would have gotten married in Nevada because they both lived in Utah. So I don't know if there's a story there, but Cora was 19 and WWII was 25. So then by 1930, they were living in Woodrow in Millard County, Utah. So it's just north of Delta, Utah. They rented their home and they lived on a farm. He was a farmer. You can see D. Verl here. So that's your grandfather. He was 10 years old. And then Arvo was 11. So that's where they had moved. So this is where they lived in 1920, was in Granite, Utah. And then they came down to just north of Delta. So I'm not sure what brought them down there. Maybe it was cheap farmland. I'm not sure, but it's not super close.
Yeah.
So then 2 years after that 1930 census, WWII Allen died at the age of 40. So Verl's father, he died from pneumonia, which he had had for several days. And your grandfather, Verl, would have been almost 12 years old.
Wow.
So this is a similar story to what your father experienced of his father passing away when he was only 13. I thought that was really interesting. Yeah. So
and my dad passed away of a heart attack, and it was sudden. So
really?
Interesting since his dad did.
Right. Yeah, so now Cora was left with 2 children. Arva, Verl's older sister, was 14, and then Verl would be turning 12 the next month. I just want to share for a second. So what are you feeling right now as you hear about, what Cora losing her husband at just the age of 40, had 2 teenage children? What do you think that would have been like for her at that time?
I cannot imagine. And to be in a small town, I'm guessing with not a lot of support since she had moved away. I have 2 teens and I have help and yet feel like I'm doing it on my own. So yeah, I cannot imagine. I just think as hard as it could be for me in the modern day, I imagine it was very different to try to survive and even thrive. And in that day. Yeah. And hearing some of the divorce, I had no idea about. And the marriage a month later, I had no idea. There's just and all these people are passed away. I can't ask a lot of questions. I don't know who to go to, but it does make me very curious for both sides of my family and the secrets that might be there.
Yeah. Yeah. I just thought it was really interesting, the similarities that your father and grandfather had as a child, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Really neat. Okay. Well, 6 months later, Cora actually married Bryant Larson in Manti, Utah. Bryant's first wife had died a year earlier, so they had a similar. And Bryant actually had 5 children, 4 who were still living at the time of Cora's marriage. So they were now a blended family, and they had 6 children, living with the oldest being 16 and the youngest being 6 years old. So now Cora is the fill-in mother for these 4 other children, which was probably an adjustment. Your grandfather, Verl, now had 2 stepsisters and 2 stepbrothers. One stepbrother was just 4 months younger than him. So it's like he had a twin almost as a teenager there. So now I want to talk a little bit more about Verl. There were no pictures of him on FamilySearch on the family tree there. Have you seen pictures of
Yes, I
him?
actually
Okay.
just got some last week from my mom.
Oh, cool.
She moved to go serve a mission and gave me some pictures. So
Oh, neat.
that was
Okay.
new for me to see
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Well, that will bring on a whole new side of his story, I'm sure, as you look through those. But I was able to find in the high school yearbook, here he is
Cute.
attending Delta High School in 1937. He was a junior. So he would have been either 16 or 17 in this photo. I actually think that you look a lot like him.
Yeah, I
Similar look.
definitely I see my brother in him for sure,
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that
which
was
I'm
neat.
sure I look like my brother.
Yeah. And then he also played football. Says that he is maybe the number 33 here, but I am not sure if that totally looks like him according to the list there. I don't know if we could pick him out. And then the year earlier, 1936, he was a sophomore and also played football. This might be him. So according to the numbered, he was 4 from the list here. So that kind of looks like that could be him there
Yeah.
playing football. But so then a few years later in 1941, when he was 21, he signed up for serving in World War II. So he was living in Salt Lake City at the time, working for, it says Glenn Schultz at the Universal Car Loading Company there. Not sure what car loading is. Should have looked that up. But and then you can see his signature here at the bottom, David Verl Allen. And then on this next page, it gives a little physical description of him. So it says he's white, he's 5'8", 160 pounds, gray eyes, brown hair, and a fair complexion. And then he wears glasses. So he's not a big guy.
No,
So,
I did not realize how little he was.
yeah, I was expecting that he'd be kind of tall, but yeah, only 5'8".
So
So
he would have
this
been the same height as my grandma, I think, or right around there.
really interesting. Yeah, so on that draft registration card, it gives his address as 107 First Avenue in Salt Lake. So I think this is about where that would be. It's like right across the street from the LDS Church office building in Temple Square. There's nothing there now, just a park, but he would have lived right downtown. So here are his military records. It says that he was a staff sergeant in the Army. Termination of service was in October of 1945 at Camp Roberts, California. And just gives some information about him. And this on the backside of that card, it has some of his military history. So it has he fought in the Ardennes, Rhineland in Central Europe. That's, I guess, the Battle of the Bulge. It's a rather famous battle that was fought in the war. He obtained several awards there and ribbons, and he is honorably discharged from the war. So here is a newspaper article from January of 1945. Can you see that well enough to read the
Yeah.
first 2 paragraphs there?
Yeah. Oh, do you want me to read out loud?
Yeah, if you could.
Okay. Sergeant David Verl Allen missing in action. A telegram was received January 10th by Bishop and Mrs. Bryant Larson that their son, Sergeant David Verl Larson, was missing in action in the German theater of war since December 16th. Until 6 months ago, he was stationed in Florida, where he was a cooking instructor. At that time, he got a furlough to come home to attend the memorial services for his stepbrother, Leor Larson. Soon after that, Verl was sent overseas.
Yeah. So this was just a notice in the newspaper that he's missing in service. I'm sure that was a hard thing for his family to learn about, to not know what was going on. And then a couple months later, this was reported in the newspaper that he was a prisoner of war and was listed as missing. So 2 months later, they haven't learned anything else. And now they just know that he's a prisoner of war in Germany. And then in May, so another 2 months later, he's home and he has been liberated from the prisoner of war camp. And I thought this was interesting. Can you just read the last sentence?
He reports no torture or mistreatment, but that the food was extremely scarce and poorly served.
Yeah.
The only story I know about this, I didn't know that there was no torture or mistreatment, so that's good, was the story was told that he cut up his boots so that they wouldn't take them, so that he could still have shoes in the snow or cold, or they had to walk a lot. And a lot of the other soldiers their boots were taken. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure a winter in a German prisoner of war camp was not the best place to be. So here's on his military records again. So it says that he was missing December 6, 1944, and then it was reported in April that he had been from a prison camp. So it seems like they didn't even know where he was until April the following year. So then he was a cook in the war. Like I said, he was in Florida until just a few months before, and then went to Germany, and then was in a prisoner of war camp. So yeah. So he's come home from the war. And then a few months later in December, there's this notice in the newspaper that he married Louise Randall in Enterprise, Utah. Or no, they actually married in Sutherland, which is just by Delta. And I thought this description of the wedding was interesting. So it says the double ring ceremony was performed by Bishop Larson at 6 p.m. with the wedding party placed in front of the fireplace, which was decorated and lighted with white candles for the occasion. The bride was charming in a wedding dress of white satin and net and an orchid corsage. Miss Edith Larson, maid of honor, wore a gray suit with rose-colored accessories. Mrs. Melissa and Mrs. Randall, school friends of the bride, were bridesmaids and were also dressed in gray suits. Mrs. Bryant Larson, so Verl's mother, was matron of honor and wore a corsage of pink rosebuds, and Marvin J. Ogden acted as best man for the groom. Anyways, I just thought that description was nice, the visual to see,
yes, the
what
flowers.
Yeah, all the description of the flowers and what they're wearing. We don't get reports of that in the newspaper anymore, unfortunately. But
that's cute.
Yeah. So they were married in December of 1945. And then by 1950, here they are in the census living in Delta, Utah. And Verl is a farmer, and they had 2 children by then. And they went on to have another son. So then here is a newspaper article about his death. So 15 years later, in 1965, in December, your grandfather died of heart attack. And here's just part of the newspaper article. I'll just read part of it. So it says, Mr. Allen had left his home in his pickup truck at approximately 1 p.m. to water and feed his horses and to rabbit hunt. Called to the scene of the death were a bunch of people, and I'll read over here so I can see better. Says, according to attorney Eliason, Mr. Allen's body was lying almost perpendicular to the road, 16 feet from the white traffic line near the edge of the pavement. His truck was a half a mile straight north from the body. There was no evidence of foul play. And then they said they'd perform an autopsy, which it found that he had had a heart attack. So your grandmother, like you said, she was a strong woman. She went on to get a cosmetology degree and then owned Louise's Beauty Box for more than 20 years in Delta, and she never remarried. And then here is his headstone. So he's buried at the Delta Cemetery, and he was able to get a military headstone there that shows his service, and this BSM is the Bronze Star medal that he obtained there. So yeah, so how are you feeling right now after learning a bit more about your grandfather and some of his background and story?
I definitely feel some emotion.
Yeah, no, it's a powerful thing I'm like a deep feeler, so I feel that too as we open up these stories of our ancestors. It's almost like I feel like there's this thread of connection to them, that they're awakened almost to be like, oh, someone's thinking about me.
Yeah, like we remember you. I think I had a grandma who was very into genealogy, and I just didn't care. I didn't. I have boxes of family history, and there's so much in there. It's a part of me.
Yep.
And so I feel some sorrow, I guess, that I didn't talk to my grandma about him or her or what it was like to be a single mom. She was just my grandma.
Yeah.
And I didn't really ask a lot of stories from my dad either. And so, yeah, it's just having me think of where I'm at now and the people that are in my life and the stories that I could be learning about my family who's living and the family who is not. Yeah. So thank you. This is very unique to be able to be told and shown some of my family history that my family has not shared with me, or maybe they've tried and I just ignored. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, I think a lot of us have that similar experience that like we have either aunts and uncles or whatever that are recording these things, but sometimes it's not always in a way that's easy to digest. That's why like this is the part that I love that, bringing these people to life to tell their story and to tell their experiences and to look at, what can we learn from them and from their story. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I can go look. I have a box downstairs my mom
mhm,
just gave me full of stories and journals. I think for me, it's seeing the pictures and seeing
mhm,
how we are related that
mm,
it makes it more real instead of just reading something on a paper that it does matter to know some of the backstories and
mhm,
for myself, be in similar situations and know how hard it is for me then
right.
to imagine what it was like for them
Yeah.
without the power of the internet or
Mhm,
support when you don't have it physically right in front of
mhm.
you.
Yeah. 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 We can learn powerful things from these stories that we can find. And what a blessing to have all of that you can look through those photos and stories. So,
Yes, thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Ashlyn, for coming and letting me do this for you. It's always everyone has a different story, and it's always just fun to navigate and to build that and share that with you. So I appreciate you coming here and letting me chat. And if anyone, yeah, if you are feeling like you want support in your own journey of shedding and becoming the person you want to be sure to go follow Ashlyn. Your Instagram handle is what is it again?
This is Ashlyn, but it's this period
Underscore
is
or
Ashlyn.
period. Okay.
Yeah.
This is
Yep.
Ashlyn. I'll link that in the show notes and I'll link to your website as well. So,
Thank you.
all right. Well, thank you so much, Ashlyn.